we're going to start with Everton, which feels like about the fourth time this season. We've started the Monday Night Club with Everton, which can't be a particularly good thing. Rafael Benitez has had 199 days in charge, 19 points from 19 games, lost 10 of those games, one win in the last 13, culminating in Saturday's defeat at Norwich. He is part of the problem, and he has to take responsibility. Adam, we'll start with you as our new member, but it is so much more than that when it comes to Everton.
It really is incredible. Just looking earlier today at the makeup of Everton's current first-team squad, you have players there that have been signed by 7 different managers. 7 different managers who have picked players, and that's kind of what you see now, this sort of hodgepodge of a squad which is, you know, it's a bit of Marco Silva, it's a bit of Ronald Koeman, it's a bit of Ancelotti, it's a bit of Benitez, and as a result it's quite confused, it lacks identity. I think that's, you know, the confusion in the playing staff. But then you go a bit broader, and since Rafa Benitez came into the club, he's been given a lot of power to reshape the medical department. There's been exits in terms of the director of medical. Danny Donaghy left a couple of months ago. There's also been exits in terms of the sporting director, Marcel Brands, recruitment, Dan Purdy and Greta Steinson. So you've given Rafa Benitez all this power, and then after a few results, he's been removed. So it leaves Everton in a situation where they don't really leave themselves particularly well stocked either in the coaching department, the recruitment department, or the medical department, and also sports science is left with Rafa Benitez today. So good luck.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, isn't it, Chris? Who's in charge? Who's in charge at the moment?
Yeah, and you know the question is what next? But a lot of the blame is on Moshiri, and that, you know, I totally understand that, and things haven't been you know perfect in any way, shape or form. You only have to see his league finishes since he's been in charge. But I do think that his intentions, you know, when he went into the club are good. You know, spent £500 million on players, and he hasn't managed the club well in any way, shape or form. It's interesting hearing Benitez in the opener talking about learning from mistakes of the past, and in many ways, you know, have the mistakes Moshiri's made, you know, he's trusted managers. You know, has he been a little bit soft? But you know, he's relied on managers to make big decisions. When he went in, he inherited Roberto Martinez, didn't he? And he ended up sacking Martinez. Martinez
very quickly after 11 games.
Yep, yeah, and you know, there's an irony there in the rumours that Martinez would come back to the club. But you know, Martinez was like a Spanish carver, and he lost its fizz. Next, he went into Ronald Koeman. Now, on the face of things, I think we'd all agree Ronald Koeman at that particular time was a good appointment. I think it finished 6th place with Southampton. You could compare him to like an Amstel, a premium lager, if you like. You know, good experience, a good reputation. He'd been around for a while. Can I
just check? Are we going to go through every Everton managerial appointment and link them to a food or drink from their country?
Well, just hang on, yeah, maybe. But the Amstel,
hold on. You was very serious then, so I didn't want to interject you, Chris, but
just hear me.
I heard something about Spanish and something about fizz.
Okay,
I tried to keep myself together.
Try and keep up. But he proved to be an expensive round with the players that he signed, didn't he, Ronald Koeman? Next, it was Big Sam, a popular appointment. Of course he wasn't, but he saved the day. He was like a premium bitter, Big Sam, wasn't he? He was like an old speckled hen. And Everton fans just didn't take to him, did they? All the same, Big Sam did the job that he was asked, but bitters... not for everyone, is it? And then he went down Moshiri went down the Marco Silva route. An exciting appointment, I think he was. You know, a younger appointment. Marco was like a Vino Verde, wasn't he? Not an old type, but up and coming. Though in the end, he didn't sparkle. Then into Carlo Ancelotti, and you've got to say, a top appointment. Seriously, a top appointment, like an expensive Barolo. He'd been there and done it. He was a heavyweight manager. the fans got giddy on him, but even Carlo, he suffered a hangover in the end and he popped off to Madrid, and Rafa Benitez came in. This was always an iffy appointment because Rafa was like a Rioja, and the fans were never going to appreciate this type of red. It was doomed to failure. So that was the end of Rafa. But where do they go now? And there's a serious point to this. Where do they go now? Because if you look at the managers, if you look at those managers and when he appointed them, the Everton fans at the particular times when these managers were appointed, they would have looked at these appointments and thought they were good appointments. You've got managers who've won Premier League titles, leagues from around Europe, Champions Leagues, but something hasn't been right. And Adam touched on it. The recruitment has been a disaster. But is it because Moshiri put his faith in these guys with big reputations and he trusted them too much, and he was let down in that respect? So while Moshiri takes the blame for a lot of this, you go back to £500 million he has spent on players. His intentions were there, and a lot of his decision-making processes, I think you have to say, well, Chris, they weren't that bad. It's just,
right.
It's
we're
just
not on 606 here, Chris. You know that. We normally share it around between.
We're 15 minutes in, and Micah hasn't given an opinion yet. I mean, that was nearly as bad as your Bruno Fernandes one. And
that was true. What happened to Bruno at the weekend?
We're going to talk
Big
to Warren
Ron
Doyle.
Wasn't there.
We're going to talk to Warren Doyle from the Blue Room podcast very shortly. I'm grateful that he's still here because he sat through the whole of that last answer. I could have easily disappeared. An overall opinion, Micah, and then we'll bring Warren in.
I've got nothing to say. He's gone through absolutely everything. There's no point. Let's get Warren in ASAP, right, please.
Warren from the Blue Room podcast. Evening.
Evening, boys. How are we? I can't promise to follow Chris Sutton with the drinks. I'll take a manager who drinks a rum and coke. That'll do us.
Caribbean style, yeah, I like that.
Listen, yeah. as Adam has pointed out, look, we'll come on to Benitez, the coach, in just a moment. But for Everton to put their faith in him to the extent that they, as Adam said, moved recruitment on, moved the director of football on, moved the head of the medical department on, moved, actually, from a fan's point of view, probably the most important, moved Luca Digne on 3 or 4 days before then sacking him. That seems to me like a club that doesn't know, really, what it's doing.
You've just summarised there the absolute volatile situation that is occurring at the moment in the Everton boardroom. If you're in any organisation, whether that be business, sports team, any industry, if the leadership at the top is erratic and turbulent, like it is at Everton at the moment, this is the symptoms of it, and you've described it exactly perfectly there. We've got rid of basically a lot of staff to empower Benitez, and what the effect of that is that now, with a complete fractured fan base, with the whole appointment in the first place of Rafa Benitez, you've now got this situation whereby in some ways it could be a blessing in disguise because we can do a reset and start again, but it's just 5 years now of mismanagement, and we are sleepwalking into a very worrying decline, and that is where Evertonians are now starting to wake up and think, what is next? How do we move on? How do we possibly turn this club around and turn it into a positive environment, which it has not been, I'd say, bar the odd 1 or 2 good games and the 1 or 2 good bit of form. Probably since Martinez's first season as Everton manager, we haven't had an enjoyable time as Everton fans.
Where does the reset need to start? What's the position that needs to be filled first so that the reset can then start with its foundations in place?
I think long term we need certainly someone who's in charge of the football side of things, whether that be a director of football or whether that be somebody who can assist and support the manager, whoever that may be, with that. I think with the football side of things, I heard you speaking before about recruitment. One of my big gripes is the youth policy we've got at Everton at the minute. We haven't brought through, for my liking, enough good young players. I look at every other club in the league and all the clubs seem to be bringing through 2 or 3 really good young players who can go into the first team and have a positive impact on that first team.
Is that because the pressure on the manager, though? Warren, and because the pressure is so intense for Everton to perform, which they haven't done for many seasons. So then the pressure's on, and then the manager's thinking as well, I can't really take a chance on these young players. I need to go with experience because I'm under pressure. I need to do better.
You're absolutely right. We haven't, I feel sorry for some of the young players at our club because they haven't been given a direct pathway. We saw Lewis Dobbin come on at Chelsea, substitute for Ellis Sims, both of them making their Ellis Sims was his first Premier League start and Dobbin come on. And we looked at that game, we drew that game 1-1, and a lot of people made out that night how, depleted Chelsea were. We had 11 first team players out, and we put in a really good performance there, and the fans were right behind it from minute one because we saw the effort and we saw the hunger. There's talk of Lewis Dobbin not signing a new contract, and if you speak to any Evertonian, why would he? Because of the upheaval at the match. He's had offers we hear from Germany and other Premier League clubs. If you're him, you're going to want to go to a club that is more run well and more structured than we are, and I don't blame him for doing that. And this, as I say, it's just one of the many symptoms of where we are at the moment because of the lack of leadership and the lack of ability to run a Premier League football club at boardroom level.
So Warren, who do you want to see at Everton then? Let's move it on, going forward.
As the new manager, I am really worried about this Martinez suggestion at the moment. The reason being, I was actually a really big Martinez fan. I thought he was a breath of fresh air when he first came to the club. But much like the way, if you're saying Rafa Benitez was possibly the worst appointment we could have made, Roberto Martinez will be the second worst appointment. And the reason being for that is the complete toxicity in the ground from when the end of his days in his last time with us. There was banners up for him to leave. There was fractures in the squad. There was an issue with Leighton Baines, who was, an Everton cult hero, one of our best ever players. So if he was to be appointed again, you're going right back to square one, like we had with Rafa Benitez. I look at the names that came out Sunday night, the ones that we're linked with, and honestly, the only one who I'm starting, I don't even know if he would be the right choice. The only one who I can think of who'd do a good job for us at the minute is Wayne Rooney. And the reason being, if you look at Derby at the moment, without their points deduction, they would be 7 points off a playoff place. They had 9 players signed in pre-season. That, to me, if you're not a good manager under those circumstances, you would crumble. To do what he's done there, if you're going to walk into any job where there is a complete division with a complete fractured fan base and a complete fractured from all levels of the club, whether that be from top level down to players, he's shown he can do that at Derby, and that's what we need. I think that would reinvigorate the fans to have a boyhood Evertonian, and I think that is probably the only way. We definitely need a younger manager. I look at the likes of Thomas Frank, and I think Patrick Vieira's done amazing at Crystal Palace, and Crystal Palace took a risk by appointing him.
But you tried that in the past, Warren, haven't you? Marco Silva was a young up-and-coming manager, Martinez first time round. You'd say exactly. He was a young up-and-coming manager.
Chris, I'm not disagreeing with you, but you know what? It's got to that point now where anything's got to be... We've got to take a risk. Anything's got to be different. We've got to do something different because this cannot carry on. I think Rooney and possibly Ferguson with him as an assistant, I think you're looking at something there which the Evertonians can get behind. If you look at when Duncan Ferguson took over last time, he got the ground rocking on day one against a very good Chelsea team. And that's what we need. I hear people say about Everton fans, what more do they want? I hear this a lot. We are not a hard fan base to please. I've heard tackles being celebrated more than goals at Goodison. All we ask for, like any club, is the bare minimum. You get stuck in, you work hard, you get on the front foot, you press, you close down. That will get you on side with Evertonians. We had a player a few years ago called Dennis Strachwalesi who was not even good enough for the Championship. He ran his backside off and he was a cult hero for the season at Everton. That is all we ask for and that is all we want. And I think those two, in Rooney and Ferguson, might be the only two who can get everyone for at least the short term, with Ferguson maybe, and then maybe longer term on side.
Well, Warren, we've spoken a lot about managers so far. I suppose this opens Chris and Micah as well. The players at Everton, I think, have known since the start of the season they have a bit of an escape route because the manager's unpopular. The manager was unpopular, therefore the players have a bit of a shield, really, if they don't turn up week in, week out. Have you guys ever been in a situation where the manager's, maybe on his last legs, maybe a little bit unpopular, where you feel that you won't get the main blame, And does that start to change now that Benitez has gone? You know, if Duncan Ferguson or Wayne Rooney's there, those players are going to get a much tougher reception, aren't they?
I think, yeah. Sorry, Ryan. I just wanted to say on the players' part, it's you never want to play, but in terms of shying away, of course, when a manager's going to take the brunt of the criticism, but we have to be honest as well. Everton did start well. They lost the top goal scorer, Calvert-Lewin. Allen was out for a bit, then Decore was out for a bit. Centre backs were out, and Mina was out, and it sort of took away the spine of the team. And people can say that's the easiest thing to say, but that's just the truth. They were just stating facts. In terms of Everton, the players as well as the staff have not been good enough. I did the Everton Norwich game the other day, and it was horrendous to watch. They must have given the ball away at least 30 times, and the players never want to down tools, because a couple of these likes of Gordon and the Calvert-Lewin, they want to go to the World Cup, so they're not going to down tools. But when a manager's not giving you what you need, sometimes it doesn't. You know, you can't get the best out of a player when he's not giving you what you need. So I understand what he's saying, but I don't think players would use that as an excuse. Maybe some, but I wouldn't say the majority of the dressing room.
I don't think that that the players would think like that. You can't think like that really as a player, can you? You know, imagine the scenario. But it was a crazy appointment, Benitez was, because of the Liverpool connection. And Everton, historically, you look at their recent league finishes, they've been woeful. For a club as big as Everton, it's been utter dross. It really has. And I think, but from a player's perspective, when Benitez came in, they would have still wanted to perform well. It just hasn't happened for them. And bottom line is I take Micah's point about key players being out, but for a group of players to underperform as they have this season, the manager's the one who always carries the can, and that's the way it's panned out.
Well, Dominic Calvert-Lewin injured is one thing, but Dominic Calvert-Lewin being injured doesn't stop you being able to head the ball away from when you're defending your own corner, does it, Warren? I mean, it must have said this blue in the face. It's done so much analysis this season on Everton's inability to defend set pieces every single game.
This has been an issue for a number of years, probably since Moyes left. And I just want to very quickly touch on a point Chris made about Rafa Benitez. And, there's a bit of a myth around the fact that because he was a past Liverpool manager, which absolutely, because of his Liverpool connections, that was never going to be favour. But I don't think his record since he left Liverpool's been great. And that was the biggest reason for us not wanting him.
Don't tell that to Newcastle fans.
Going back to the player situation, there is an underlying current and a belief between Evertonians that these players do lack character. However, what I will say to that, if you get someone in who's young, who I heard someone the other day say, I think it might have been Stephen Warnock on 5 Live, saying that he wants to play, he looked forward to going to training when he had a manager who believed in him but also made things exciting and made you want to work for him. And I see someone like a Rooney or even a younger manager who's in touch with modern football, who's in touch with how modern players act, behave and how they are today. And I think he could possibly get the best out of these players who, quite rightly, like you've all said, have underperformed. We as Evertonians, you've all been to Goodison and seen it when it's moody and when it's horrible and when it's toxic, and we are not shy in coming forward and letting them players know that it's not good enough. However, flip that over, if they work hard for us, you'll get no better backing from any set of fans.
You talked about Stephen Warnock and what he said. This was on 5 Live yesterday afternoon. Danny Murphy was alongside him, but Stephen, first of all, to discuss what it's like to play under Benitez.
He's hard work.
He is.
He is hard work. He is not a man manager. He's not someone that you walk in the building and he's welcoming, he's warm, and he puts on sessions that you go, this is great, this is challenging me, this is exciting me. He is cold. That doesn't excite me to go into a building. And I've played under a fair few managers. There's managers where I walk in, I can't wait to go in. I'm excited to see what we're going to do that day. He's completely the opposite. It's like going into any workplace. If your boss is miserable and he doesn't inspire you, do you think your team of people within that environment are going to work well?
I've got this problem here today with Chappers.
It's a tough one, that there.
Slightly unnecessary end to that conversation, but there we go. The interesting thing, and I want to come back to you, Warren, on Martinez in a moment, but Roberto Martinez is the opposite of Benitez in that sense, Adam. You know, you talk to players and players who work with him, and the man himself, you know, we've all interviewed him, worked with him. He is such engaging company, and you could talk football for hours with him. He's such an intelligent man. So he is the opposite of Benitez in that sense. But from what you're hearing, it's unlikely to go ahead, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is interesting talking to agents or people close to players over the past week or so. The big takeaway has been that Everton players felt that Benitez didn't really believe in them to really stamp their authority on games and play in their own way. With their own identity. That was the way that the players were left feeling a little bit inhibited. And Martinez is the opposite of that. He is someone who will, at times, almost blindly tell his players how much he believes in them, how they can conquer the world, or almost relentless positivity. I think he's changed a bit since he's been with the Belgium national team over the last few years. I think he's become a bit more pragmatic, a little bit less idealistic. In terms of, is he likely to go? I think it's clear Everton have got a strong interest in him. They'd like to take him on an interim deal until the end of the season. And that's been suggested before while Martinez has been at Belgium. I think Newcastle looked at that briefly earlier this season. Martinez, I don't think he's mad about the idea of a job share. But I think the Belgium FA have a big issue with it, because they know that Martinez is popular in Belgium. You know, when Belgium finished third at the World Cup in 2018, that team came back to a hero's reception, and Martinez has to tread a bit carefully, I think, with the way he's perceived in Belgium, because you don't want your country's national team to be perceived as a side project, which is possible if you start managing a club and a country at the same time. On the flip side, there aren't a huge amount of games for Belgium to play between now and June, or certainly serious games, if you like. So that does give an opportunity. I think that as it stands as of tonight, Belgium are digging in and saying, you know, we'd really rather you manage us until the World Cup, and then you can go and do what you want afterwards. So it might be a case of how much Martinez wants to fight that.
They were 12th were Everton with one game to go when he was sacked in 2016. And they'd reached the semi-finals of both cups, I think, that season as well, Warren. But he was sacked after a run of 1 win in 10. Why did it end in such a toxic way? I have a theory, by the way, that the moment everything changed for Martinez and Everton was the night Kevin Morales took the ball off Leighton Baines for a penalty against, I think it was West Brom on a Monday night, when I was there that night, and took one of the worst penalties ever, had argued about taking it, and it felt then like the tide had turned. But why was it so toxic at the end?
Well, first of all, before I answer that question, Chappers, don't be taking that off an ex-cop-iting Stephen Warner.
I know. Next time they put Warnock and Murphy together, I'll get you back on, Warren. That's a good idea.
Yeah, and I'll have a pop at them both. The reason why, to answer your question, why it went so toxic towards them with Martinez, and I agree with what you said before about what a brilliant fella he is. He absolutely embraced Everton. He loved everything about it. He got invested in the history of the club. He wanted to really be successful. So as a person, as a football man, can't fault him. The reason why it got so toxic towards the end is we had a really good core group of players at that time. We had, obviously, Romelu Lukaku, we had John Stones at the back, we had Ross Barkley, we had a really good young Gerard Deulofeu. We had some really cracking players who could have made Everton go on. And we had 2 successive 11th place finishes after a 5th place finish when we almost made the Champions League places. We almost finished 4th. And I think a lot of Evertonians got tired of going 2-0 up in games and losing games 3-2. There was another game against West Ham. We were 2-0 up with, I think, 12 minutes left. And he subbed on Oumar Niasse for a defender or for a midfielder completely killed the game. Tactically, we were just completely shot, and we ended up losing the game 3-2. And even the most ardent Martinez supporters then were starting to turn against him. If that was to happen again, we talked earlier about set pieces and about how we've always been a liability and how teams, quite rightly, are going to attack us with set pieces because they know that's a weakness of ours. Martinez, wherever he's been, has never been a proven set piece or defensively minded manager, which is great if you want to play the brand of attacking football that we'd all love to see. Any fan would love to see at any club. But unfortunately, we need to be a bit more solid now because we are leaking goals and shipping goals that are going to cost us in the long term.
I mean, Moshiri cannot pick Martinez after picking Benitez.
I wouldn't put anything past him.
He just can't do it. Yeah, but that would be. I mean, talking about not reading the room when he picked Benitez. So then Martinez and all ended badly for Martinez before. But to go back when a lot of Everton fans feel the same way as you do, Warren, to Martinez, I mean that would be a more bonkers appointment than Benitez in many respects, wouldn't it? To go back to back.
We're talking about an owner who appointed the director of football and elected them to the Everton board to then never use him because he went to his agent mates and signed players who were agents for his mates. We're talking about a man who just completely ignored his director of football from what we hear and didn't let his director of football do the job. And then, like we said earlier, sacked him so that Benitez could have full power, sell Luca Dean and then get rid of all the backroom staff. And then the medical team, and then sack Benitez. So listen, Chris, the way Everton are at the minute, anything's possible, mate.
Warren, thank you very much for coming on and sticking with us through Chris's first answer. Much appreciated. Warren Doyle, see you soon. Thank you from the Blue Room podcast. Warren said Rooney. Who would you say, Micah?
I would give Rooney a go. Why not? I think, I didn't know the history with sort of Martinez, the way it ended. In terms of tacticians, the way I worked with Martinez for 18 months at CBS, and he's amazing, incredible, his tactical nous, knowing how to look after player, great guy, but I didn't know it ended so badly, so maybe it's not the right fit, but if for a young up-and-coming manager, why not Rooney? Why not? Rooney and Big Dunk until the end of the season, see how it goes.
CBS, of course, being a broadcaster, not a team in Romania that Roberto managed with Micah there.
If people don't know CBS now, I've mentioned it every week for the last past
but the way
30 weeks.
But the way
We've got regular listeners on here.
The way you start that with, I've worked with him at CBS. He's a great tactician. Made it sound like he coached you for 18 months.
Michael, I thought it was a sort of secret part of the end of your career somewhere, Cyprus or something like that.
Chris?
The Wayne Rooney one's really interesting because, he has talked, Derby are in a real mess about his, he feels attached to Derby at this moment in time and the staff. I mean, they're in a complete mess. I think it would be a massive gamble. If I was going to get anybody or try and get anybody, it would be Graham Potter. But that's not going to happen. Or it's unlikely to happen.
That's a heck of it. Look, this isn't putting Everton, the football club, away, but that's a heck of a risk, isn't it? Going from Brighton, who have everything in place, to Everton, who don't appear to have anything in place.
Yep, but when you look at what he's achieved in his managerial career, I think Brighton have a fantastic identity. I mean, we know their issue the last couple of seasons, but I think he's built the club, and that's what Everton need. I think that he's an outstanding candidate for a lot of big jobs. But why would he leave a club like Brighton, who performing well, to go to a mess like Everton at this moment in time?
Adam?
Someone no one's really mentioning with Everton, I'd go for Ralph Hasenhüttl from Southampton, actually. I think in terms of the way they play, the way that home fans want them to play, which is high and up and at them and big intensity, I think he'd suit them quite well. And I think it'd be a step up for him from Southampton. Obviously, they've got new owners there, haven't they? But even so, I think it would be a step up for everyone, really, in that respect. But they would need a sporting director in there with Hasenhüttl to help him on the recruitment.
Okay, Chris Sutton, Adam Crafton, Michael
Be a
Richards.
step down from Southampton, because Southampton are ahead of Everton, Adam, in the table. Just checking the league there. I don't want to be pedantic, but
you can
give it 2 weeks.
You can email us at mnc@bbc.co.uk. Stephen says the issue is not the number of different managers. Bayern are the best run football club on the planet. They've had 6 different managers since 2016. Chelsea equally change their manager regularly. The issue is the ownership and executive board, who are devoid of strategy and football knowledge. And Josh has been in touch. How can people question the licence fee when Chris Sutton is comparing Everton's past managers to alcoholic beverages on 5 Live Sport? Every little helps, Chris. Well done.